Fifth entry. Topics: Square. The rulers of the world. A pleasantly useful function. Again it's all wrong. Again I speak to you, my unknown reader, as though you. As though, let us say, you were my old friend R13, the poet, the one with the negroid lips, everybody knows him. But you are, on the Moon, on Venus, Mars, Mercury. Who knows where you are, or who you are? Now, think of a square, a living, beautiful square. And imagine that it must tell you about itself, about its life. You understand, a square would scarcely ever think of telling you that all its four angles are equal. This has become so natural, so ordinary to it that it's simply no longer consciously aware of it. And so with me, I find myself continually in this square's position. Take the pink coupons, for example, and all the rest that goes with them. To me, this is as natural as the equality of its four angles is to the square, but to you it may be more of a mystery than Newton's binomial theorem. Well, one of the ancient sages said a clever thing, accidentally, of course, love and hunger rule the world. Ergo, to conquer the world, man must conquer its rulers. Our forebears succeeded, at heavy cost, in conquering hunger. I am speaking of the Great 200 Years' War, the war between the city and the village. The primitive peasants, prompted perhaps by religious prejudice, stubbornly clung to their bread. But in the year 85 before the founding of the one state, our present food, a petroleum product, was developed. True, only 0.2 of the Earth's population survived the war. But, cleansed of its millennial filth, how radiant the face of the Earth has become. And those 2/10 survived to taste the heights of bliss in the shining palace of the one state. Is it not clear, however, that bliss and envy are the numerator and denominator of the fraction called happiness? And what sense would there be in the countless sacrifices of the 200 Years' War, if reasons for envy still remained in our life? Yet they did remain, for there were still button noses and classical ones our conversation during the walk. There were still some whose love was sought by many, and those whose love was sought by none. Naturally, having conquered hunger algebraically, by the sum total of external welfare, the one state launched its attack against the other ruler of the world, love. And finally this elemental force was also subjugated, i.e., organized and reduced to mathematical order. About 300 years ago, our historic lex sexualis was proclaimed, each number has a right to any other number, as to a sexual commodity. Since then it has been only a matter of technology. You are carefully examined in the laboratories of the sexual department, the exact content of sexual hormones in your blood is determined, and you are provided with an appropriate table of sexual days. After that, you declare that on your sexual days you wish to use number so, and you receive your book of coupons pink. And that is all. Clearly, this leaves no possible reasons for envy. The denominator of the happiness fraction is reduced to zero, and the fraction is transformed into a magnificent infinity. And so what to the ancients was the source of innumerable stupid tragedies has been reduced to a harmonious, pleasant, and useful function of the organism, a function like sleep, physical labor, the consumption of food, defecation, and so on. Hence you see how the great power of logic purifies everything it touches. Oh, if only you, my dear readers, would come to know this divine power, if you, too, would learn to follow it to the end. How strange. I have written today about the loftiest peaks of human history, I have breathed all this time the purest mountain air of thought, yet within me everything is somehow cloudy, cobwebby, shadowed by the cross of a strange, four-pawed X. Or is it my own shaggy paws? And all because they have been so long before my eyes. I dislike to talk about them, and I dislike them, they are a relic of a savage epoch. Can it be that somewhere within me there is really I wanted to cross out all this, because it is outside the outlined topics for this entry. Then I decided I would leave it. Let my notes, like the most sensitive seismograph, record the curve of even the most insignificant vibrations of my brain, for it is precisely such vibrations that are sometimes the forewarning of. But this is entirely absurd. This really should be stricken out. We have channeled all elemental forces, there can be no catastrophes. And now all is entirely clear to me. The odd feeling within me is simply the result of that same square position I have described before. And the troubling X is not within me, it cannot be, it is simply my fear that some X may remain in you, my unknown readers. But I am confident you will not judge me too severely. I am confident you will understand that it is far more difficult for me to write than it has been for any other author in the history of mankind. Some wrote for their contemporaries, others for their descendants. But no one has ever written for ancestors, or for beings similar to his primitive, remote ancestors. Sixth entry. Topics: An incident. The damned, it's clear. 24 hours. I repeat, I have made it my duty to write without concealing anything. Therefore, sad as it is, I must note here that even among us the process of the hardening, the crystallization of life has evidently not yet been completed, there are still some steps to be ascended before we reach the ideal. The ideal, clearly, is the condition where nothing happens anymore. But now. Well, today's One State Gazette announces that the day after tomorrow there will be a celebration of justice at the Plaza of the Cube. This means that once again some number has disturbed the operation of the great state machine, again something has happened that was unforeseen, unforecalculated. Besides, something has happened to me as well. True, this was during the personal hour, that is, at a time especially set aside for unforeseen circumstances. Nevertheless, at about the hour of 16 or, to be exact, 10 to 16, I was at home. Suddenly the telephone rang. A female voice, D 503. Yes. Are you free? Yes. This is I 330.1 shall call for you in a moment, we'll go to the ancient house. Agreed. I 330. She irritates and repels me, she almost frightens me. But this is exactly why I said, yes. Five minutes later we were already in the aero. The blue majolica of the Maytime sky, the light sun in its own golden aero buzzing after us, neither falling behind nor overtaking us. And ahead of us, a cloud, white as a cataract, preposterous and puffed out like the cheeks of an ancient Cupid, and somehow disturbing. Our front window is up. Wind, drying the lips. Involuntarily, you lick them all the time, and all the time you think of lips. Then, in the distance, blurred green spots, out there, behind the wall. A slight, quick sinking of the heart, down, 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 as from a steep mountain, and we are at the ancient house. The whole strange, fragile, blind structure is completely enclosed in a glass shell. Otherwise, of course, it would have fallen apart a long time ago. At the glass door, an old woman, all wrinkled, especially her mouth, nothing but folds and pleats, the lips sunk inward, as if the mouth had grown together somehow. It seemed incredible that she would still be able to speak. And yet, she spoke. "Well, darlings, so you've come to see my little house?" And the wrinkles beamed. They must have arranged themselves radially, creating the impression of beaming. "Yes, grandmother, I felt like seeing it again," said I 330. The wrinkles beamed. "What sunshine, eh? Well, well, now." "You little pixie." I know, I know." "All right, go in by yourselves, I'll stay here, in the sun." My companion must be a frequent guest here." I had a strong desire to shake something off, something annoying, probably the same persistent visual image, the cloud on the smooth blue Mallorca. As we ascended the broad, dark staircase, I-330 said, "I love her, that old woman." Why? I don't know. Perhaps for her mouth. Or perhaps for no reason. Just like that. I shrugged. She went on, smiling faintly, or perhaps not smiling at all. "I feel terribly guilty." Obviously, there should be no love just like that, but only love because. All elemental phenomena should. "It's clear," I began, but immediately caught myself at the word and cast a stealthy glance at I-330. Had she noticed it or not? She was looking down somewhere, her eyes were lowered, like shades. I thought of the evening hour, at about 22. You walk along the avenue and there, among the bright, transparent cells, the dark ones, with lowered shades. And behind the shades. What was behind the shades within her? Why had she called me today, and what was all this for? I opened a heavy, creaking, opaque door, and we stepped into a gloomy, disorderly place. They called it an apartment. The same strange, royal, musical instrument, and again the wild, disorganized, mad music, like the other time, a jumble of colors and forms. A white flat area above, dark blue walls, red, green, and orange bindings of ancient books, yellow bronze, chandeliers, a statue of Buddha, furniture built along lines convulsed in epilepsy, incapable of being fitted into an equation. I could barely endure all that chaos. But my companion evidently had a stronger organism. "This is my favorite," and suddenly she seemed to catch herself. A bright smile, white sharp teeth. I mean, to be exact, the most absurd of all these apartments. Or, to be even more exact, I corrected her, the states. Thousands of microscopic, eternally warring states, as ruthless as "Of course, that's clear," she said, apparently with utmost seriousness. We crossed a room with small children's beds. The children at that time were also private property. Then more rooms, glimmering mirrors, somber wardrobes, intolerably gaudy sofas, a huge fireplace, a large mahogany bed. Our modern beautiful, transparent, eternal, glass was there only in the pathetic, fragile little window squares. And then, imagine. Here they all loved just like that, burning, suffering, again the dropped shades of the eyes. What stupid, reckless waste of human energy, don't you think? She seemed to speak somehow out of myself, she spoke my thoughts. But in her smile there was that constant, irritating X. Behind the shades, something was going on within her, I don't know what, that made me lose my patience. I wanted to argue with her, to shout at her, yes, shout, but I had to agree, it was not possible to disagree. She stopped before a mirror. At that moment I saw only her eyes. I thought, a human being is made as absurdly as these preposterous apartments, human heads are opaque, with only tiny windows in them, the eyes. As though guessing, she turned. Well, here are my eyes. Well, silently, of course. Before me, two eerily dark windows, and within, such a mysterious, alien life. I saw only flame, some fireplace of her own was blazing there, and shapes resembling. This, of course, was natural, I saw myself reflected in her eyes. But what I was feeling was unnatural and unlike me, it must have been the oppressive effect of the surroundings. I felt definitely frightened. I felt trapped, imprisoned in that primitive cage, caught by the savage whirlwind of the ancient life. You know what, said I 3:30. Step out for a moment to the next room. Her voice came from there, from within, from behind the dark windows of her eyes, where the fireplace was blazing. I went out and Saturday down. From a shelf on the wall, the snub-nosed, asymmetrical physiognomy of some ancient poet Pushkin, I think, smiled faintly right into my face. Why was I sitting there, meekly enduring that smile? Why all of this? Why was I there? Why these ridiculous feelings? That irritating, repellent woman, her strange game. A closet door was shut behind the wall, the rustle of silk. I barely restrained myself from going in and I don't remember exactly, I must have wanted to say very sharp words to her. But she had already come out. She wore a short, old, vivid yellow dress, a black hat, black stockings. The dress was of light silk. I could see the stockings, very long, much higher than the knees. And the bare throat, and the shadow between. Look, you are clearly trying to be original, but don't you? Clearly, she interrupted me, to be original is to be in some way distinct from others. Hence, to be original is to violate equality. And that which in the language of the ancients was called being banal is with us merely the fulfillment of our duty. Because yes, yes. Precisely, I could not restrain myself. And there is no reason for you to. She went over to the statue of the snub-nosed poet and, drawing down the blinds over the wild flame of her eyes blaring within her, behind her windows, she said a very sensible thing, this time, it seems to me, entirely in earnest, perhaps to mollify me. Don't you find it astonishing that once upon a time people tolerated such characters? And not only tolerated, but worshipped them. What a slavish spirit! Don't you think? It's clear. I mean, that damned "it's clear" again. Oh, yes, I understand. But actually, these poets were masters far more powerful than their crowned kings. Why weren't they isolated, exterminated? With us. Yes, with us. I began, and suddenly she burst out laughing. I could see that laughter with my eyes, the resonant sharp curve of it, as pliantly resistant as a whip. I remember, I trembled all over. Just to seize her, and I cannot recall what I wanted to do. But I had to do something, anything. Mechanically I opened my golden badge, glanced at the watch. "10 to 17. "Don't you think it's time?" I said as politely as I could. "And if I asked you to remain here with me?" "Look, do you know what you are saying?" "In 10 minutes I must be in the auditorium." "And all numbers must attend the prescribed courses in art and sciences," she said in my voice. Then she raised the blinds, looked up, the fireplace blazed through the dark windows. "I know a doctor at the medical office, he is registered with me. If I ask him, he will give you a certificate that you were sick." "Well?" Now I understood. At last, I understood where that whole game of hers was leading. "So that's it." "And do you know that, like any honest number, I must, in fact, immediately go to the office of the guardians and—" "And not, in fact," sharp smile bite. "I am terribly curious, will you go to the office, or won't you?" "Are you staying?" I put my hand on the doorknob. It was brass, and I heard my voice, it was also brass. "One moment. May I?" She went to the telephone, asked for some number, I was too upset to remember it, and cried out, "I shall wait for you in the ancient house." Yes, yes, alone." I turned the cold brass knob. "You will permit me to take the aero?" "Yes, certainly. Of course." Outside, in the sunshine, at the entrance, the old woman was dozing like a vegetable. Again it was astonishing that her close-grown mouth opened and she spoke. "And did she remain there by herself?" "By herself." The old woman's mouth grew together again. She shook her head. Evidently, even her failing brain understood the full absurdity and danger of the woman's conduct. Exactly at 17 I was at the lecture. And it was only here that I suddenly realized I had said an untruth to the old woman. I-330 was not there by herself now. Perhaps it was this, that I had unwittingly lied to the old woman, that tormented me and interfered with my listening. Yes, she was not by herself, that was the trouble. After 21:30 I had a free hour. I could go to the office of the Guardians right there and then and turn in my report. But I felt extremely tired after that stupid incident. And then, the legal time limit for reporting was 2 days. I would do it tomorrow. I still had 24 hours.